I think it was George Orwell who said to, in the time of universal deceit, just to tell the truth is a revolutionary act in itself. So that basically applies to Ben because he was employed by the NHS. And some of you might know he's got his own YouTube channel, so he puts stuff out there. So basically they took a disliking to it and they said, look Ben, we're going to sack you for telling the truth. So basically that's what they did to Ben. But good on Ben, because at least you didn't compromise your morals for political or monetary gain, which is what the psychopaths do. Yeah. So well done. You should give Ben for a clap. Right, so with no further ado, we'll just present Ben Emlyn-Jones. There you go, Ben.
Thanks, Kirsty. Thank you. Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to this Pamo live show. Is anyone here a hospital porter before I begin? Anybody? No? Am I at the wrong meeting again? have I gone to that Truth Juice Hole place? Is that it? Oh. Well, now I'm here. Is anyone an ex-hospital porter? Nobody?
I've got a friend who's a hospital porter.
Close enough, you can stay. The rest of you, yeah. As I said, I put my hand up there when I said, is anyone an ex-hospital porter? Because I was a hospital porter. In fact, I was a hospital porter for 23 years. I was one of the... I mean, there's no room for false modesty. I was one of the longest served. I was one of the most highly trained, the most dedicated, one of the most valuable members of staff that hospital had. Yet they disposed of me. I was discharged from the National Health Service almost instantaneously in very suspicious circumstances, which I'll go into later. Okay, so it's nice to be here in Hull. I've not actually been at Hull before ever. Now, how many of you went to the E&R Crane event last night? Did you? Oh, good, most of you. That's great. Yeah. I went to the one in Nottingham. It was brilliant. I'll be mentioning the fracking issue as well, and I'm sure Ian won't mind even if I actually tell you, my own spin on some of the things he said, which I think are very relevant to what I'm going to talk about today, which is energy politics. Now, I actually had the opportunity to come to Hull, I should say before I begin, in 2008, because David Icke, as some of you will know, stood in the Halton, Price and Howden by-election. I wish I'd gone, and I didn't, because I'd have met you guys a lot earlier. I'd have met my current girlfriend a lot earlier than I did. Yeah, and I thought David was making a mistake. I was wrong. I think he did a good job. So David, if you're watching, I apologise. I was wrong. It's, energy, I'm going to talk about energy politics tonight, which is a subject I've been studying very closely, and I found it ties in with a lot of other things, and I've brought a lot of research together on what other people have done, like we all do, and I think there's a very important thread here we need to follow, because it ties in with a lot of other things which I'll come to later as well. So energy is what we're talking about tonight. I hope you've got plenty of it. I think I've got enough anyway. Well, what is energy? That's the thing. It's I mean, I'm not a scientist. I have no formal education at all. I'm just an amateur. Sort of amateur, sort of like researcher. But I mean, I've read up a little bit on the science behind it. Energy is a very difficult thing for the scientists to actually define. It's a feature of the universe that doesn't easily fit into a category. It's not something that you can easily describe. It's basically anything that causes movement and change in the universe. Anything that changes, any state which changes in the universe requires energy. The movement of energy from one place to another. Every time when I raise my arm in the air like that, the wrong meeting again. When I raise my arm in the air like that, when I do that, I need energy to do that. The food I eat, combined with oxygen that I breathe and the air I breathe, it causes a chemical reaction in my body, which gives me energy, which allows me to move, allows all of us to move. That's mechanical. That's muscle power basically is what it requires. Now, the reason scientists, if you ask scientists, they'll say that the amount of energy in the universe is fixed. There's only a certain amount to go round, and it was decided the moment the universe was created at the Big Bang. Now, we're going to I'll come into a bit more later about that and why that might not be the case. But you know, our human civilization uses energy. I mean, we, like I said, we use energy in our body as biological energy, but we also use other forms of energy. We take energy from other sources outside of our biology. And in the case of our civilization, we take fossil fuels. We use oil and coal and gas and things like that, and solar power, and all those wind farms I saw when I was coming up here on the coach. Those things like that, all that is energy that our society uses. It's everything. I think it virtually is society. It's the very thing that keeps society going. And oil, I think, is the central one. Oil is the one that is, I think, the central fuel that we use for most things. And it is black gold, it's called. It's the lifeblood of civilization. And really, everything in our society depends on that. Is that necessary? Well, we'll come to that in a minute. There may be alternatives. Now, there's an American bloke called Richard Heinberg who's done a very interesting thing. He has he's done a history of humanity and charted our relationship with energy and what it is and how it works with us, how we work with it. It shows how we have progressed from early stages of using just muscle power to what we have today. And for most of the time we humans have been around, in fact nearly all of it, I think 99% of the time we humans have been around on Earth, we've used just muscle power, according to official history. A lot of what I say today has alternative explanations, alright, but I'm going to just give you the mainstream view first, okay, because I know there's a lot of dispute about what I just said, and I agree with a lot of people who dispute it, but I'm just going to say that according to the official view, humans have been around for several million years, and all we've used in most of it, nearly all of that time, is muscle power. So the pyramids were built with muscle power, apparently. Guys tugging stones like that. And again, there's another side to that story, which I'm going to come on to, and I don't know, which this is what Heinberg says anyway. So basically, he's drawn a graph like this. Right, that's just quantity. All right, that's just quantity there. And that is time. He's drawn a graph. Now, what he's done is he's mapped the population of the world alongside energy. Am I getting that? I think I am on camera. That's it. I hope you can see that. If anyone watching this on the Panmo TV, if you can't see this, I'm sorry. All right. But basically, he's charted this on. He's charted the world population from the beginnings, and for most of the time, like I said, for the 2 million years we've been around, it was very, very low. There were just maybe a few thousand of us for a long, long time. And we used muscle power. So that blue line means population. Alright. And he's charted energy as well, energy consumption, which again it matches. That's the wrong colour, sorry. He's right. That's it. That's sort of greeny red now, but it's energy consumption. I can't concentrate if I swap the colours over. That's energy. Alright, and that's how he sort of like worked it out. And of course, the energy that we use is of course just muscle power, so it basically comes from just what we eat. Because there's not many of us, you don't need a lot, Then we started using beasts of burden. Hello, hi. Then we started using beasts of burden. We domesticated animals, horses, camels, donkeys, mules. We started getting these poor creatures to do our bitch work for us. And that again, I mean, that was sort of for the last few thousand years we've done that. And right through into the medieval era, that's all we had. We had manpower and horsepower, or various other beasts of burden. So a camel, or a horse can probably do the work of about five humans. And so we had that for many, many years. Then suddenly, everything changed. Basically, that was how it was until maybe about 200 years ago. And suddenly, boom, everything changed all in one go. We had the Industrial Revolution. And it was like an explosion in every way imaginable. It was in two phases. The first phase, through most of the first century, was coal. The second phase was oil, and these two overlap quite a bit. We still use coal today for lots of things, but That's basically the central oil fuels were coal and oil, and that's what we use, fossil fuels. Now, I'm sure Ian might have mentioned last night, if you went to Ian R. Crane's event, oil might not be a fossil fuel. Now that's a big subject I will touch on again. I think he may well be right there, but again, we're going to work on the assumption that it is for convenience's sake, for the point of this little talk today. So we'll assume it is just for now. You know, we went in almost just a single few years. We went from using just muscle power and animal power to steam trains, factories, foundries, and steamships and things like that. Really, almost overnight. So what happened was, our energy consumption shot up. It went like that. It was going along like quite happily right through the ancient world, right through the medieval era, and suddenly it went zoom like that, to really up like that. And at the very same time, because energy is so closely related to human sort of society, our population rose as well. It rose. It almost matched it. It was going along like that. Human power, animal power, suddenly boom, up it went like that. That's what happened. And that's the world we live in today. Right up there, we're using all this energy. It's an incredible revolution. Like I said, we went from using animal power or manpower, which is the same thing as biological muscle power from food and oxygen. And suddenly, you know, we had a situation where we had an energy source that was hundreds of thousands of times more efficient and more compact. I mean, for example, you know, if you have a car, you know, when you fill your tank up with petrol, you have the equivalent in that little tank of 250 Roman galley oarsmen in terms of sheer energy storage. So you know, every time you turn the key in your car engine, you have 250 Ben-Hurs, you know, they're all sitting, you know, and of course, you know, it's hard to imagine. It's something we take so for granted, but you know, I mean, I travelled today from Oxford in 7 hours. That's over 200 miles in 7 hours. Now, almost barely a human lifetime ago, that kind of journey in that short space of time would be unthinkable. I'm going back there tomorrow, just going there and coming back. I've been away from Oxford just barely more than 24 hours. I mean, just barely a generation ago, or even a few generations ago, I'd have it would take me a week. The round trip would take me a week. It's incredible. You know, and if you want an illustration of how different, you know, fossil fuel power is to muscle power, instead, when you get in your car tomorrow, don't turn the engine on, get out and push it, see how far you get. That is the perfect illustration I'm talking about. And our entire human world is constructed on the foundations of this energy source. It's, you know, people say it's the world, you know, oil is the world's biggest industry. No, it's not. It is industry. It is the human world. It is the lifeblood of civilization. Oh, I've done that bit. Forget that. It really is. And, you know, it's, like I say, it's the fuel and the lubricant of civilization. And Heimberg describes this very, very well indeed. Oh, it's not just cars. We're talking about lorries, we're talking about railways, talking about ships, talking about electricity as well. You know, which is very, very an important factor as well. The disadvantages, Heimberg again, he describes this very eloquently. I haven't parted company with him yet. He says there's a finite amount of resources in the world, and he's right. He sets it at the wrong level, but he's right. And he says that basically our numbers were so small and our energy consumption was so small that for all of history, we just went along like that. You know, the energy, the actual resources. By resources, I mean fuel, food, fisheries, farmland, things like that. Just went along like that. And then as soon as the Industrial Revolution came along, it went boom, started to go down. And basically, when our consumption and numbers went up, we started depleting what he calls the natural capital of the earth. And he says that's unsustainable. And you know, it's in terms of environmental damage as well. That's resources. Again, you know, anyone watching this at home on Hapanwo TV, I'm sorry if you can't see this. But basically, and there's another one as well, that's environmental, all kinds of damage, environmental destruction, things like that. And again, this was very, very low, it was right down here. But again, It starts to go up when we hit the Industrial Revolution. So that's environment, that's damage. Let's put D for destruction or damage. Now it's that's the basic situation Heimberg, as Heimberg sees it. He says we're basically heading for destruction. You know, what he says is basically this can't go on. Now, as Ian may have told you last night, he doesn't believe that oil is a fossil fuel. He believes it's renewable, and he may well be right. It's true that in Russia, you know, they go back. So that when the well is depleted, there's no more pressure. They leave it for 10 years or so. They go back, and the pressures come back, and they can get more oil. Now, of course, that's kept very quiet. It's common knowledge among the oil industry, but it's not released in the news, because if it did, you can imagine what it would do to the price of oil. And that's very important, right? What it costs, because there's a few middlemen, right, who have nothing to do with any new world order or anything like that. They are just out to make money, and it's a lucrative industry for them, and they don't want that coming out. Okay, whether it's fake or not, all right. The fact of the matter is the oil industry is behaving as if oil was running out. All right, so the prices go. They're charging us more for it. They're doing things like they're putting out these deep water rigs, oil rigs, to get the deep water oil, which of course has caused this terrible Gulf disaster. And Ian was told you all about fracking last night. For those of you who didn't go to Ian, fracking is a situation where they get gas out of the ground by pumping high pressure water and chemicals into it, which breaks the ground apart, and it lets all the gas out. Unfortunately, it lets a lot of toxic chemicals out as well to poison the environment as well, and it basically breaks up the ground under our feet, so you get earthquakes and sinkholes, things like that, all kinds of disasters. And of course, this causes economic problems, you know, because when the price of oil is affected, the price of everything else is affected. I mean, hands up anyone here whose energy bills have not gone up. I didn't think so. And this affects the price of everything. I mean, my energy bills are included in the rent, but of course that then has to be included in rent rises for me. This is a big problem. Oil affects the price of everything because it has to be paid for. It has to be drilled, coal has to be mined, you know, it has to be refined. Millions and millions of man hours is spent on getting this energy to us, which is why it costs so much. And if it's running out, or it's perceived to be running out, that causes major economic problems. And half the people in the world or so can't even afford it, and they just, this is the place we call the third world, and they use a lot of their technology that we used to use before the Industrial Revolution. They still use horses and carts and things. It works, but they don't have access to the same amount of energy that we do, and that's affected their lives. Now, this does damage to the environment. Acres of countryside has to be ground up for pipelines, for power stations, toxic waste coming out of power stations, things like that, fracking, oil spills. You know, it's an endless list. And then the alternatives are, you know, there's solar, wind power, things like that. And you know, obviously it's being explored in this area very much because you've got a lot of wind farms around here, I've noticed. But they alone are not enough. The wind farms have a very high overheads. There's very little sort of energy profit on them, so to speak. And then things like this, it's not good. It's not sort of really good for that kind of scale of energy generation that we need. You know, mega energy is it called. Now, nuclear power stations, there's been a few of them. They're not. The problems with them have been very, very well documented, like Fukushima, Chernobyl, Windscale, places like that. You know, for thousands of years, people have been paying the price for what's happened there, to you know, those accidents. And the fuel of nuclear fission, that is, they get these rods of heavy metal, uranium, which is what causes all the radiation, which hurts, which causes so much damage. That's running out too. It's going to run out before oil or coal. Now, nuclear fusion power is something interesting, because I went to the Cullen laboratories and I saw their tokamak, which is a big nuclear fusion reactor, which is where they basically have a big ring of these magnets and they put this gas inside and they heat it up to hundreds of millions of degrees, and that produces energy. But that's still in the experimental stage. It's been running for about 50 years, 40, 50 years. It's still in the experimental stage. They're working on a new experimental reactor now. It's not really ready for decades to come. You know, so it's kicking the football along the road. So I don't think Heinberg thought much about that particularly. Of course, there's lots of talk about the dreaded carbon. Carbon, as it's called. Used to be called carbon dioxide gas when I was a kid at school learning science, but now it's carbon. Trademark. It has been rebranded. And as George Monbiot always calls it that, or what does Alex Jones call him? Lord Monbiot! That spindly little twit! It's a good job the cat's not here because I'd scare him. Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of talk about that now. It's a big subject, you know, but I mean that's not the monster it's been led to believe. In fact, it's plant food. But I mean, even if you don't accept that carbon dioxide emissions are dangerous, every other emission that comes from these fossil fuels is dangerous. The oil spills, the chemicals that come from burning coal. You know, it's causing the kids getting breathing problems around power stations and things like that because they're inhaling this coal dust from the furnaces. I mean, you get the distinct impression, you know, that there's a comedian called Robert Newman, and he's done a video. You can get it on YouTube. It's quite a comedy. It's like a comedy, and it's called The History of Oil. And it's funny. I mean, I don't agree with his views, but it's worth watching because at the end he sort of manifests as the devil, and he says, "There's no way out," and it's quite depressing in a way, even though it's funny, sort of tragicomic kind of thing. And basically, what Heinberg is saying is this is what's going to happen. The population is going to keep rising, destruction is going to keep rising, resources are going to keep falling, and I mean we can already see this happening in the world. Sooner or later, it's going to come to a crunch where the energy, the resources are right down here, population is right up here, and then energy. What's going to happen is when the resources run out. I need one of those multicoloured pens. What's going to happen is energy consumption is going to drop off. It's going to go. And when that happens, it's going to be boom, wars, things like that. And you see that already. On one level, I know it's not the real reason, but on one level, you know, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are about these resources, oil and other natural resources. What's going to happen, sadly, according to this is Heinberg again, what will happen is Heinberg said the population is going to go down, talking about a massive amount of death in the world. And of course, environmental destruction is going to keep rising. And that's basically Heinberg's vision of apocalypse. And there's no way out, as Robert Newman says. No way out. But is there no way out? I'm just going to switch these over a little bit.